So since there's a ton of stuff to Epic Mickey Awesome Edition, I thought it'd be kind of fun to whip up an Awesome Edition Iceberg. These are all of the entries and all the layers right here, and I'm going to go through all of them and just give a brief explanation of what they are and what they mean. I'm sure you know how Iceberg images work by now. Basically, all they are is just stuff near the top are topics that are generally more well-known, and the deeper you go, the more obscure or lesser known or even darker the entries can get. So I don't really like doing super long intros, so we're just going to start here with AE was inspired by Games Repainted. This one is pretty obvious, right? It's in the trailers and it's even mentioned in the hack itself. Games Repainted was a team of people who would take Wii and GameCube era games and make texture hacks of them, basically, because they thought it was fun and they thought it was funny, and then they would stream them on Twitch or whatever platform it was, right? Some of the more popular ones they have are Luigi's Mansion Repainted and Mario Sunshine Repainted. They've also done other games like Deltarune, but now they've moved on from Games Repainted and they all have their own lives, they're all busy, so unfortunately it looks like Games Repainted isn't going to be making any more repainted hacks, but at least Awesome Edition hopefully can live up to the Games Repainted legacy. Next is the hack is sentient. This one is also pretty obvious. This is pretty much the entire focal point of the game's story and lore. The hack and all of the characters in it are sentient. Some characters are more sentient than others, but that's a topic that we can get into later. And to remove the sentience from the hack, the player has to beat the game and free all the characters from going through this cycle. Greenie is the postal dude. The voice that we used for Greenie for his jump sound effects and stuff like that are the Rick Hunter version of the postal dude from the Postal franchise. I just really like those games, and Rick Hunter's voice is super smooth and super badass, so I wanted to use it for Greenie since he's the main character. Removed V1 content. So basically, quite a while ago, I by myself made Awesome Edition V1 and uploaded it to Google Drive, made a couple videos, and that was kind of it. And then I felt like I didn't really do it justice and that I totally could have done way more with this Awesome Edition repainted hack idea. So I got some of my friends and we ended up making Function Point, and we all started working on Awesome Edition V2, turning it into what it should have been. And remove V1 content basically means that throughout the development of Awesome Edition V2, we decided that some things were just outdated and weren't really funny, or they didn't really fit that well, so we got rid of it and replaced it with other better stuff. Awesome Edition OST. This one is referring to the Awesome Edition soundtrack, basically just a playlist of all of the music that we used for Awesome Edition V2, since we didn't even know how to change audio when I made Awesome Edition V1. And there's even some completely original compositions that are a part of the Awesome Edition OST, which I just think is super cool that we made our own music for this stupid shitpost hack. Fungus can communicate through the hack. There are quite a few times throughout Awesome Edition where the dialogue is written as if I myself was communicating with Greenie or even the player themselves, and most of these pieces of dialogue are more or less just to build the lore a little bit and explain some of the story that's in the hack, but other ones are just funny and don't really mean anything. Some characters are more sentient than others. This one I mentioned on the last layer a little bit. It's pretty self-explanatory, just some characters in the hack are more aware of the fact that they're in a hack than others. Some characters like Bus and Horace are very aware that they're in a hack, and others are not. Pretty self-explanatory again. Awesome Edition was a virus. This idea is introduced in the very first cutscene of the game when you load a save for the first time, and then it's fully explained in the last cutscene after you beat the game. But basically, the origin of Awesome Edition in the Awesome Edition lore, obviously, is that somehow all of the files from the computers of all the Function Point members just got absorbed into this horrible shitpost hack, and that's how Awesome Edition came to be. And the explanation for the files all culminating together like that is that there was a virus doing it, basically. Ventureland Drug Empire. So the whole story that takes place in Ventureland, or Vietnam Land as it's called in Awesome Edition, is that the Blood Gang took over the Crips Gang's territory and also took over their drug empire. So you need to help the Crips either retake their position in the drug empire or let the Bloods continue to control the drug trade by themselves. Bus is fully sentient. This one is building off of the some characters are more sentient than others one from a little bit earlier. Basically, Bus is indeed fully sentient, at least a lot more than some other characters are, except he just doesn't really care and he pretty much just lives to get high. Gremlin names are based off of function point members. This one is also pretty self-explanatory. Some of the gremlins that you find in Awesome Edition have been renamed to be based off of function point members. Other gremlins names are just based off of people from the Epic team when it was still a thing, or people who are really popular in the Epic Mickey community, or people who have otherwise helped us figure out stuff for Awesome Edition, kind of like as a way to say thank you to them. Awesome Edition native support. So unfortunately, there isn't really a good way to get Awesome Edition natively running on a Wii. You can get everything except for the textures running on a Wii, but that kind of sucks because textures are a really big part of Awesome Edition. So I just put this on here to kind of explain some of the questions I've got from people asking if you can play it on a modded Wii or Wii U. Extra content is ripped files. Whenever you pick up a extra content collectible in Awesome Edition, it says new file ripped. This is just continuing the theme of how the hack is just ripping files from all of our computers and putting them all together into one hack. So instead of extra content, it's just referred to as ripped files. How to download and play Epic Mickey Awesome Edition. This was the title of a video that I uploaded alongside the release of Awesome Edition V1 that eventually got flagged by YouTube and was taken down. I'm still kind of salty about this, honestly. I filed an appeal to get it put back up, but it took like less than half a second after filing the appeal for me to get an email saying that my appeal was rejected. So I guess that's just YouTube bullshit at it again. Awesome Edition development start date. This one is just saying that nobody really even knows when Awesome Edition development really started, at least to an exact date. I know that it was early June when I started working on Awesome Edition V1, and I think the earliest reference of a file that I have on my computer is from June 2nd, 2021. So it's been over 2 years in the making of Awesome Edition V2, which is just crazy to me. Awesome Edition in AI Mickey. In some of the newer AI Mickey streams that we hosted on the Function Point channel, there was a chance that some of the background characters' textures would get swapped out for the textures that we used for Awesome Edition, kind of just as a little Easter egg. Maid Pete is transgender. So Small Pete in Awesome Edition is replaced with Maid Pete, and throughout the hack there are a couple references that show that Maid Pete is actually transgender. For example, characters always use she, her pronouns when talking about Maid Pete, and I think one of the Petes or maybe one of the gremlins says something like, "I'm so proud of her transition," or something wholesome like that. But yeah, we just wanted to have a nice wholesome bit of dialogue there for that. Bus's addiction. Throughout the game, and especially when you get to Vietnam Land, Bus's dialogue strongly suggests that he has an addiction to methamphetamine, and by the time you get to the Jolly Rancher, expecting that you're going to get a rocket part, it instead turns out that Bus basically had you sidetrack this whole time just to get some meth to feed his addiction. Clone characters. So some characters we retextured to look like characters from other media, like Gilda is Lammy from the Parappa the Rapper series, but because textures are reused in between other generic background characters, it ends up looking like there's multiple Lammies and stuff like that, and that's just what this clone characters thing is referring to. Greenie is fully sentient. This is just an idea that also builds off of the some characters are more sentient than others one, and also the Bus is fully sentient entry. The idea that Greenie is fully sentient can't really be explored that much because he doesn't have any dialogue in the game, obviously. But yes, Greenie is fully sentient, except he's just not capable of really expressing himself, and he doesn't really have any free will because he's just being controlled by the player all the time, which is why sometimes he's portrayed as being like a puppet in some of the renders that we made. Joker World wants anarchy. After you defeat Donald Trump in the Luigi's Mansion attic, Jokerwald basically is the only candidate that can become president of Baseland, so he automatically becomes president, and then he starts talking about how Baseland is much better under his rule because he's the Joker, right? So he wants anarchy in Baseland. Epic Mickey 2 Awesome Edition. I don't want to talk about this one that much, but if you do play Awesome Edition, then just watch the final cutscene after you beat the game and maybe you'll understand. Awesome Edition is illegal. This one is kind of just messing with the idea that Awesome Edition is technically illegal in some countries because some countries have laws that make it illegal to mod video games, but obviously it's not actually illegal. There's not any illegal content in it. Hopefully we don't go to jail for making an Epic Mickey shitpost hack. Rigger Green is a foil for Horus. This is one of the big points of Horus's story in Awesome Edition. So the story with Horus is that there was kind of a glitch in the hack that made it so Horus was supposed to be turned into BoJack Horseman, but for some reason he wasn't, and he just stayed as Horus, but he's still sentient like other characters. So he doesn't really know what to do with himself, and he's super stressed out and worried about it. But Rigger Green had the exact same thing happen to him, and instead of freaking out and worrying about it, he comes to accept it and instead chooses to live as if he was Robbie Rotten, which is the character that he was supposed to become. So Rigger Green is written to be as a foil for Horus, meaning that he's supposed to highlight characteristics of Horus, and Horus is supposed to highlight characteristics of Rigger Green. Audio modding was because of Awesome Edition V2. I guess this one is also self-explanatory. We would not have figured out audio modding if we didn't have Awesome Edition V2 as a reason to even want to mod audio in the first place. I think the first audio edit that was ever made in Epic Mickey history was replacing the Clock Towers theme with the Trollolo song, and now audio edits are a huge part of Awesome Edition V2, and hopefully more people can use Awesome Edition as an example for stuff you can do with Epic Mickey modding. Awesome Edition Wii menu channel. Just for fun, one time we made a Wii menu channel that was supposed to boot up Awesome Edition. We got the icons and stuff working for it, but for some reason we couldn't get it to actually load Awesome Edition, but there are pictures and stuff of it. It's pretty cool. The pipe organ is fully sentient. When you get to the ballroom in Luigi's Mansion in Awesome Edition, Bus makes a comment about how the pipe organ was completely consumed by the hack and he can't really make any intelligible speech without just making like YTP sound bites, dumb shit like that. And then he makes a comment saying something like, "I hope to God he's not sentient, that would be worse than death." So that's what this entry is about, is just playing with the idea that the pipe organ is sentient, but he's basically trapped in his own prison because he can barely even form coherent sentences. Died.mp4. This is just the file name for the first video documentation of Awesome Edition. I think it was recorded in like June or July 2021. It's basically just me in a VC showing people how to edit cutscenes, and I brought up the intro to Daisy cutscene and then everyone laughed at it. It was super funny. Awesome Edition is a political commentary. There are a lot of political topics in Awesome Edition, as stupid as it sounds. Like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are both in the game, and there are some politically charged remarks that characters make throughout the hack in bits of dialogue and stuff like that. Awesome Edition isn't like an agenda or anything stupid like that. It's just us making jokes about politics because we think it's funny. Mr. Beast Stage the Gang Wars. This one is probably my favorite entry on the Iceberg, just because if you heard the phrase Mr. Beast Stage the Gang Wars out of context, it sounds fucking stupid. But in Vietnam Land, a character named Ruffian Brandison is replaced with Mr. Beast in the hack, and there's a line of dialogue where he says 100 Bloods versus 100 Crips compete for $100,000 or something like that, which is based off of a title of a video that Mr. Beast uploaded. So this entry is kind of just saying that there is an implication that Mr. Beast staged the Blood vs. Crips war in Awesome Edition to make a video about it and to just get money. Horus is the main character. This one is really interesting to think about. We spent more time writing Horus and making files for Horus than any other character in the game, by far. We put more thought into how the character should act and what he should say. And of course, there's Horus's end cutscene at the end of the game, which I'm not going to spoil it, but it's super cool, and I'm super proud of my friends for coming up with this stuff. But with how the hack always seems to revolve around Horus, and how there's a lot of characters that eventually link back to Horus in Awesome Edition, it's kind of just fun to think about how he might actually be the main character, at least in Awesome Edition, obviously. The player is canon. I just thought this would be a fun one to put at the very end, but it does kind of entertain the idea of how the player is directly spoken to via dialogue in the game at some points, and during the end cutscene as well. So, yeah. And that's pretty much it for the Epic Mickey Awesome Edition Iceberg. If you want to see more stuff about Epic Mickey Awesome Edition or other projects that we're doing here at Function Point, then you can subscribe to this channel or join the Function Point Discord server, and hopefully we can see you in one of those two places.